Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Our names are Owa and Mel, and we will be your hosts today on our show, Are You Awoke? On today's show, we have two McMaster students with us, a woman and a man. Neither of them have ever taken a gender studies course. They are not in humanities, social studies, or social science programs. We will be asking them a series of questions, and they will write down their answers on the papers in front of them. We will keep track of their respective points, and the winner at the end will receive a secret prize.
Stay tuned to find out who wins.
Question 1. Which racial group receives the least amount of likes on dating sites? A. Indigenous women, B. Black women, or C. Asian women?
That's hard. Wait, is it A, B, C?
It's A, B, C. Please present your answers. Okay. And Siganen, you are correct. It is black women.
Are you reading the question too?
Yeah.
Online dating benefits white people the most and favors black people the least, with other races falling in between. The idea that black women are not suitable for respectable dating or marriages, but instead fitting for temporary and sexual relations is very prevalent in today's society. People see black women as sexual objects. And that is why, but it's one of the reasons they suffer the most when it comes to interracial dating.
Yeah, all of that is very true.
Which group of women faces the highest rates of incarceration in America? Is it A. Black women, B. White women, or C. Latina women? Please present your answers. Correct. A was correct. Unfortunately, yes.
Very important.
So in 2021, the imprison rate for black women was 1.6 times the rate of imprisonment for white women. And Latina women were imprisoned at 1.3 times the rate of white women. The rate of imprisonment for black and Latina women has actually declined since the year 2000, while the rate of imprisonment for white women has actually increased. So, yeah, there's that.
It's disappointing. It's unfair.
Yeah.
We gotta do better.
We do.
But that's what I think all of these answers show us, and I think they also showed our contestants today that we need to do better, and that starts with educating ourselves. And that's the whole purpose of this today. And of taking a gender studies course is to educate yourself, put yourself out there.
Yeah, we need to learn that, the criminal justice system is, deeply flawed, and
It is stacked against people of color.
it actually is,
Lady Liberty isn't like a weight sort of thing. It is very heavily leaning one way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Question 3. Why do black women tend to date within their own race on dating apps?
So this is like an open-ended.
Open-ended question.
I think speaking from personal perspective, as a woman of color, sometimes it's easier for people of the same background to relate on things that are somewhat inexplainable to people of other cultures. Like, it's a whole thing to explain opposed to them just getting it. If that makes sense.
Siganen?
I think it's the fact that maybe when you're dating in your own culture, own race, it's just that you feel more comfortable. Maybe there's a sense of an unspoken oppression from other races that are coming towards you.
Well, I'm sure that is true to some extent, but the answer is the fetishizing of race. Black women tend to experience a lot of fetishizing of their race.
Exotic.
Yes.
But I feel like those two answers are also valid.
They're valid, but they're not the one I found. Okay.
So, although Sedanen and Rida were fairly correct when talking about the cultural differences and how that affects dating, that's fully correct. But the answer I was looking for was the fetishization of race. Oftentimes when black women match with white men or men of other races, they get comments along the lines of, I've never been with a black girl. I've always wanted to be with a black girl. I love the color of your skin. I like your chocolate skin, things like that. And so being fetishized, I can speak from somewhat experience as a redhead. People do fetishize my hair color, which is like weird. So people either are grossed out by my hair color, or they're like not grossed out, but you know what I mean, like they're turned off by it, or they have this like idea of having sex with a ginger woman, banging a ginger, and it makes dating really difficult. I know from experience that I feel unsafe almost when people start doing that. I'm like, this makes me uncomfortable. This gives me the ick, and I can only assume I can only guess that's how black women feel in the dating world.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's actually very similar. I mean, racial fetishization kind of like sucks for anyone. And, you know, I feel like a lot of the time it's just like one of those forms of, you know, racism that doesn't really get called out because it seems like, you know, you're complimenting them. But like if your compliment is based on a certain perception that you have of their race or their skin color, then I mean you're still putting that person into like a box, which is, you know, not something that we should be doing.
And I've always wanted to be with a black girl. It sounds like you're collecting Pokemon. Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? Like that's not a thing. We're not just like, people aren't just like a checklist, like on a checklist for you, like, oh, I want to be with this kind of person, I want to be with this kind of person. Like, no, you can't do that. Or well, you can actually. Unfortunately, you can do that, but you shouldn't. And especially since it's of a sexual nature, mostly when it comes to dating, the fetishization, that, I'm sure for people who've been sexually abused, like I've been sexually abused, and when I'm fetishized like that, it just brings me back to that place of feeling unsafe in my own skin, and I can imagine it's 10 times worse for women of color.
Question number 4. How many women have personally experienced unwanted sexual behavior in the workplace? Is it A, 1 in 10 women, B, 3 in 10 women, or C, 5 in 10 women? Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
You may now show your answers. The answer was B, 3 in 10 women.
I was gonna say 50% is hectic.
Yeah.
But like,
It's like the stats of like 9 in 10 women have been assaulted once in their life, you know.
yeah, but
How's
this
a
is
man
like
beating you?
specific to the workplace, not like in general.
That's fair.
Right, I'm more woke than you.
Okay.
So even in like the era of, you know, Me Too, with all this awareness about sexual harassment is still an issue in the workplace, and women are much more likely to face unwanted sexual behavior in the workplace. So as we said before, the answer was 3 in 10 women, so 29%, were targeted by inappropriate sexual behavior in a work-related setting, compared to just 17% of men. And 1 in 3 women and 1 in 8 men experienced unwanted sexual behavior in public. And 1 in 5 victims of sexual assault, both women and men, felt blamed for their own victimization. Most commonly, it was either the perpetrator or the victim's friends or family who were the source of this feeling. And yeah, that's just so disappointing. You know, it kind of just like adds insult to injury. You know, it's like you're pouring salt in the wound. You know, you've already been victimized once, and now you're being victimized again by having everyone else blame you for what happened.
In that situation, it's like one of the few situations in life where you can blame someone else. And like, well, for me, that I should be able to blame someone else and not feel any empathy towards them. Like that, in that situation, that's what you're supposed to, that's what it should be. But when you add the guilt that someone else has put on you, and now that you can't stop putting on yourself, like once that guilt comes into your mind, it's never leaving. I speak from experience. I still, like, I went to court over my sexual abuse years later, and I still feel guilty about what happened. I still feel like it was my fault, that I should have been better. And I was just a child. Like, people go through that every day. It's unbelievable. The guilt keeps people from reporting, and which without reporting, that sexual assaulter is going to keep on doing it again.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's probably part of the reason why people like want victims of sexual abuse to feel guilt, so they won't come forward about it, and so the abusers can keep perpetuating their abuse.
Yeah, they can just keep on abusing, and no one's safer for it. Because if someone is sexually been committing sexual assault or abuse, they are very likely to commit again. So, yeah.
Question 5. Roughly a quarter of women experience sexual assault in their lifetimes. What are the chances that an Indigenous woman will experience sexual assault in her lifetime? A, 1 in 2 women, B, 1 in 4 women, or C, 1 in 3 women?
Right.
Yeah.
Reveal your answer. The answer is A.
Nice.
Half
Damn.
is a 50-50 chance, roughly.
Very unfortunate. Yeah. I feel like we've been kind of educated on that though. Like it's come up a
Well,
lot.
you have. Clarice Gone hasn't.
I'm just clearly educated in everything else.
So roughly 50% of Indigenous women will experience sexual assault in their lifetime. Only a third, so around 33% of non-Indigenous women experience sexual assault in their lives. And even worse, roughly 25%, 26%, so a quarter of Indigenous women will experience, Indigenous women will experience sexual assault in childhood, while only 9% of non-Indigenous women have experienced sexual assault in their childhoods.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. I mean, yeah, I mean, we were already talking about like, you know, the trauma that comes with sexual assault, but I mean, you know, it's probably worse for Indigenous women and girls because, you know, they have been so devalued by our government and by our society that they get, you know, less attention when these kinds of things happen to them.
They don't, like, they're it's hard to talk about because it's so unfortunate because people, based on the color of your skin, it decides whether or not you're going to be sexually assaulted in your lifetime. It decides your chances. It's like you flip a coin, or you roll a dice, and it decides whether you're going to be traumatized for the rest of your life or not. And that's just how it is, and that's we're told to just to accept it. We're not taught about it at all, and just sort of expected to just leave everything alone, leave everything how it is, just keep on going.
Yeah. I mean, you know, as twisted as it is, it kind of does make sense. I mean, abusers intentionally choose their victims. You know, they choose people that they don't think are going to come forward, people that they perceive as easy targets. And I think they know that because, you know, the government and like the legal system does not really protect Indigenous women, that people like this think that they can get away with it.
I mean, even just to go to jury duty, like if they're to be called in for jury, like imagine hard to be a part of a judicial system when they're purposely leaving you out of it. And so it's even harder to thrive and to get justice in a system that's just leaving you out of it.
Absolutely.
Question number 6. Which household task is most likely to be performed by women? Is it A, cooking, B, childcare, or C, laundry?
I would not have guessed that.
It's a tricky one.
Yes.
She
It's
said
hard.
cleaning, cooking, and laundry.
Yeah,
Cooking,
A was
childcare.
cooking, B was childcare,
cooking.
C was laundry.
Cooking, childcare.
This is a hard one. Like,
All the above.
Yeah, they do all of them. We do all of them, but
Yeah.
there's one that we're most likely to do.
I found out a couple days ago. I should not be trusted with A, cooking. I accidentally poisoned myself.
Okay, you may now show your answers. The answer was C, laundry.
no way.
Yes, that's what Statistics Canada says.
That's so crazy.
We're not woke anymore.
Okay, so this question was a tough one. So although women's participation in the workforce has increased, women are still being tasked with the majority of household labor. And according to Statistics Canada, most household tasks are more likely to be performed by women than men. So the two most common routine household tasks that were most likely to be done by women were preparing daily meals at 56.4% and doing laundry at 61.1%. And we also found that for couples in whom both partners had a post-secondary education, men were more likely to assume primary responsibility for meal preparation, housework, dishes, grocery shopping, than couples in which neither of them had a post-secondary education. So why do we think that education plays a role in this?
I honestly don't know how education plays a role. I know plenty of men who had post-secondary educations who I seriously doubt will be changing the world with their feminism or with how they work in the household. I know plenty of women who have been to post-secondary and still call them pink and blue jobs. So I wish I could know how that was different.
Yeah.
Do you have any answers for me?
Yeah, I think, even though, there are limits to receiving like a post-secondary education, like, the lens that a, Western university institution gives you is a very specific lens, but it also has the potential to really broaden your horizons, especially for people who have never heard ideas like the ones that we're talking about. So, maybe someone sits inside of a gender studies course and they learn about the mental load, they learn about the second shift, and they decide that, my relationship is going to be more fair and equitable.
That makes sense. I can't think of any reason because there are strong women in and out of universities. There are strong women in and out of colleges. So it couldn't. I think it has to be on the man side. It has to be the men's side of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like a woman. If a man volunteers to do that stuff on any side that was willing to, a woman would take it. A woman who was doing all that stuff would definitely take the opportunity.
Yeah, but like a lot of men just think
Won't.
it's normal, They've been
They don't know how difficult it
raised
is.
with that sort of mentality that, women do one thing, men do another thing.
But oftentimes, since women are everywhere in workforces, well, not everywhere, but thankfully most places, unfortunately not everywhere, now they have jobs, so they have work 9 to 5s or 8 to 6s or whatever. They don't have, once they get off of work, they don't have time to cook all the meals, take the kids to school, because school hours do not align with working hours. So
That's true.
if, without men doing that, they would have to have nannies, housemaids, things like that, chefs, and you can't sustain that in today's economy unless you're a Kardashian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question 7. If women make 79 cents for every dollar their male counterparts make, how much do Latina women make compared to the man's dollar? The answer: A, 63 cents, B, 59 cents, or C, 54 cents. So again, if women make 79 cents for every dollar that their male counterparts make, how much do Latina make compared to the man's dollar? 63 cents, 59 cents, or 54 cents? Please reveal your answers. That you're both incorrect. It is C,
No.
54 cents to the man's
Really?
dollar.
Damn. That's crazy.
What? No way.
Black women make 64 cents. They make more than Latina women, apparently.
That's
How do they even
crazy.
gauge that? Like,
Yeah, like
what's
what?
that based off of?
I don't remember the name of it.
No fair, but like just like the wage in general, you know what I mean? Like, how do you like, oh, you get 55 cents, but they get 25 cents? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
That's
I don't know.
crazy.
Okay.
So women of color suffer a lot more in the workplace as they face issues of exclusion because of race and gender. Like when the 15th Amendment was dissolved in the states, allowing people to vote no matter their race, it's still discriminated against women of color because although their races, they were fine to vote because of their race, it was their gender that was stopping them. And only when the 15th Amendment was dissolved for women of color, were all, like, no, only when the 15th Amendment was dissolved, 19th, sorry, only when the 19th Amendment was dissolved were women of all colors able to vote, because people of color were allowed, men of color were allowed to vote for that. But if it had been the other way around, it still would have taken, like, if women had to vote for people of color, black women still wouldn't be given the vote. Women of color still wouldn't be given the vote just because they have to deal with it on both sides. Whereas men of color, they had to deal with just being of color, or white women just had to deal with their gender. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, it's the double discrimination that we've learned about in this course is the double discrimination that women of color face.
It's true. I mean, like, this is like the problematic nature of only looking at one lens of oppression, because there are people who face multiple forms of oppression simultaneously. So any sort of like framework or any movement that is not taking them into account is ultimately leaving those people behind.
Yeah, you can't look at it like, I think for a long, but until I really learned about double discrimination, like I knew that women of color, like I subconsciously, like I knew that they dealt with both of those things, but I sort of just saw it as just being discriminated against. Like I would have seen it as like, yes, you are discriminated against. I wouldn't have thought about the complexities, like I knew about the complexities, but you're discriminated against on two different fronts when you're a woman of color.
Question number 8. What year was the Muslim feminist group known as the Revolutionary Association of Women in Afghanistan founded? Is it A, 1986, B, 1977, or C, 1965?
This is pure gut feeling.
Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
You may now show your answers. It was
B, 1977.
Okay.
So I wanted to add in this question because we here in the West have consumed a lot of stereotypes about Muslim and Arab women. They are thought of as needing to be saved by Western women. But there are so many Muslim groups, Muslim feminist groups that we don't know about because, Western feminism has always been concerned with the plight of white women, white middle-class women. And so, other stories and other narratives get erased. So the Revolutionary Association of Women in Afghanistan was actually founded in 1977. And, this organization, which is based in Calcutta, Pakistan, is one that promotes women's rights and secular democracy. It aims to involve the women of Afghanistan in both political and social activities aimed at acquiring their human rights and continuing the struggle against the government of Afghanistan based on secular, not fundamentalist principles in which women can participate fully. And, they did all of this, on their own, They didn't need Western women to come in there and save them from themselves. They were able to organize on their own, and they knew the needs of their communities. So it's really important that, we here in the West don't talk over Muslim women or Arab women. We should be focused on uplifting their voices because, they have the most attachment to these issues, and they probably know how to organize on the ground better than we do.
Yeah, they understand the complexities of their issues. We don't. We just see, women suffering. We assume, we look at it from our own perspective, but they have their own. They're raised in a different place, with another culture, different families, different values, because there are very different values. Muslim women, it's a culture to be Muslim, but it's also a religion. Whereas people of the West, we're not as organized in religion as that. So we can't even understand, white women can't even understand how to solve issues because we don't fully understand the issues. We don't understand what people want. Our job should be to lend people the voice that we were given.
Yeah.
White middle-class women, we can be loud. We have the power, and we should be using it like a megaphone for them, not for us to scream over everybody else like you were saying, but to raise their voices, like you said, to make people listen.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Question 9. Between 1956 and 2016, around 4,000 Indigenous women and girls have gone missing. How many Indigenous men and boys have gone missing in that same period? A, 600, B, 800, or C, 1,000? Please reveal your answers. It is A. Siganan, you are correct. While there are 4,000 Indigenous women and girls that have gone missing, only 600 Indigenous men and boys have gone missing.
4,000?
Yeah.
Damn.
So what?
Indigenous women are 400% more likely to go missing than other Canadians. The article that I read for this spotlights two major styles of behavior that the women said police had employed on them when reporting cases like that, when dealing with the police, bringing the police in on these occasions in these Indigenous communities, and the police just justify violence or dismiss for violence, and it's the very same thing with sexual assault. It's justifying and dismissing. Canadian police repeatedly use negative labels to such as runaways, along with other racial slurs when they're talking about that. They have this lens that they view Indigenous people, and they do not keep it out of their work. There's a place for your belief, there's a place for treating when you're working, you cannot base anything on stereotypes. I mean, honestly, I think as a police officers should be colorblind. That's the only one I think that's the only case where colorblindness works, is when they're police officers of hand. Because if you try not to see color, that means you don't see stereotypes for them. And that's where it seems to go wrong a lot for Indigenous women. I mean, that's just a theory I have, that if they were just worked on colorblindness while they're working, maybe it would be better. I think there's a time and place for seeing race when you're working as a police officer, and it's not when trying to console victims.
Absolutely. I mean, like, the concept of colorblindness is like, it's a very complex issue because, as you said before, like, there are times when it actually is important to pay attention to race, because then, you know, we can only tackle these like racial disparities if we actually point them out.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you know, it's important that we don't encourage discrimination, especially in policing. You know, that's such a big issue. You know, the fact that, you know, you have to be a certain skin color, a certain income level to even get a proper investigation. You know, the idea that, you know, not to like malign anyone else for bringing attention to, you know, missing white women, like, you know, the Sarah Everhart case, that was like all over the media. But, you know, Black women, Indigenous women, they go missing all the time, and they rarely get that same level of media attention. And that's definitely an issue. And it's not that certain women need less attention, it's that these other women need more attention.
When a woman goes missing, when anyone goes missing, that should be number one priority. A robbery should not be number one priority. I get it, money's important to everybody, but there are insurance companies that can help them in the meantime. I'm not too knowledgeable about that, but when someone goes missing, woman, man, or child, Black, white, brown, Indigenous, whatever, they could have the worst sunburn of their lives. It doesn't matter. It's just, you know, like, I could be fully red. I could be red. It shouldn't matter. You
Absolutely.
know? That has nothing to do with it me being red, but I'm just saying, like, if someone paints themselves purple, it also should not matter. It's a human being and they're missing, and, you know, they could be scared, they could be hurt, there's a chance they could run away, but there's a bigger chance. But even if they did run away, the chances of them being harmed, because they're alone, and also the Canadian climate. Have you seen moose?
Mm-hmm.
A moose is like gigantic. You see stuffed animals and you're like, oh, it's so cute. We also have bears. There are polar bears. There are grizzly bears. Black bears aren't as much of a worry.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot of hazards.
we've got wolves too. We have snakes. And we have dangerous people. And if you can prevent further victimization by putting all your effort into finding them and saving them, that's what they should be doing.
Absolutely.
And our final question: what percentage of trans people report having poor mental health? Is it A, 65%, B, 70%, or C, 57%? You may now show your answers. The answer was A, 65% of trans people report having poor mental health. Very unfortunate.
Okay, our final question. I thought that this question was so important given the political climate that we're in right now. As we all know, anti-trans discrimination is on the rise, both in Canada and the US, with legislation being passed to target this community in the way of bills criminalizing trans healthcare, bills forcing teachers to out students to their parents, which can put them in a very dangerous situation, etc. So I thought it was so important that we remember that all these bills do in fact have an impact on trans people, and that we can't forget those impacts. So as we said before, the answer to this question was 65% of transgender and non-binary individuals reported poor mental health, which is 5 times the proportion of those who are cisgender, so which is 11%. So, that's obviously a very big gap. And transgender and non-binary people were also more likely to have contemplated suicide in their lifetimes than those who were cisgender. So 45% versus 16%. And, one other fact that I thought was very important to mention was that according to the most recent census data in Canada, trans people ages 15 and older make up 0.24% of the population. So, there is a massive amount of disproportionate media attention being put on this group of people, and it's having a very negative effect on them mentally.
Yeah, it's enough to make you cry. It's more than enough to make you cry. And I think one thing you have to remember is, when talking about God, people bring religion into this. God doesn't make mistakes. People say that all the time. God is all powerful, all kind, all good, all knowing. And God doesn't make mistakes. So when God puts someone in the wrong body, in a body that doesn't fit them, or then sure, God hasn't made a mistake, but God has allowed made it possible for us, and if you believe in God, if you believe in all that stuff, to be able to do surgeries, and for us to have the mental capacities to identify as we choose. And so God would not have given us those tools if they were evil, if they were bad. And that's just the thing to remember is, if your reasonings are along those lines, I don't believe in that stuff, but if your reasonings are along those lines, think about God. Are you saying that God made a mistake?
Yeah.
Are you being blasphemous? How
Nope. Can't have that.
Not in this house. But it's just you can really see the rise of anti-trans stuff in social media. I've unfollowed a lot of sites where I think SixBuzz even was posting
yeah.
I don't remember when I unfollowed, but SixBuzz is is a very popular Instagram, and I unfollowed them because they were entice, they were trying to get people to talk about it in the comments about stuff like that, and trying to get people to fight and stuff, and it's just
that's the thing. A lot of people are stirring up a lot of this hatred for attention because they know that stirring up fear in people generates views and it generates clicks. But trans people really do have more reason to be scared of us than we do of them, because they are such a small minority. They literally make up less than 1% of the population.
Yeah.
So they're a very vulnerable group.
And there are so many people against them, and no matter the race, there are people against them in different groups. And trans people can be of any race, any and different. There's different sexualities, there's different genders, you know, like switching from one to the other. Like if the discrimination is just all across the board. There's no ending to it, and there are people who've been beaten to death or nearly to death because of it, and violence is never okay. Violence is never the answer. Unless you hurt a dog, then I will kill you. Just kidding. Or am I? But yeah, it's never the answer. People see it as it's too easy. It's use your words, man. I think we have voices.
Yeah.
Like, using your voice can't kill you unless someone starts using violence against you because of your voice.
Yeah.
But it's gruesome. It's disgusting.
It really is.
I should have
Thank you both for coming today. 5 to 4.
I'm more woke.
Violence is never okay. Violence is never the answer. Unless you hurt a dog, then I will kill you. Just kidding. Or am I? But yeah, it's never the answer. People see it as it's too easy. It's use your words, man. I think we have voices.
Yeah.
Like, using your voice can't kill you unless someone starts using violence against you because of your voice.
Yeah.
But it's gruesome. It's disgusting.
It really is.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah. I think the solutions we can find are incorporating into our educational system, like in high school, I think especially, into like mandatory courses about doing stuff like that. I mean, there is the issue of when some people are brought into mandatory courses, they might not be like willing to, and they might make a joke out of it and make it like not a safe space. But you know, like bring it into like your children's lives. Make children's books about it. Make it more lighthearted. Make children's TV shows where it promotes people, like everyone. Promotes everyone. People of different races, people of different genders, sexualities, of different incomes, and makes everyone feel seen.
Yeah, you're right. It really does. You know, it has to start at an early age. You know,
and it doesn't, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want a lot of people say, I just think bringing a drag queen into a classroom and having her shake her ass in front of children is like bad. I'm like, no shit, no one should be shaking their ass in front of children. That is giving porn to children. Like, but that's not like what people are trying to do by educating children. We're trying to make sure that no one in the future gets hurt, and also to uncultify the education system, because if you only learn one perspective, that's dangerous. You're indoctrinating people.
Exactly.
So teaching kids young that that everything's normal. So if you want to be that, that's fine. Like if you want to be that, but if you are that, that's fine. And when you're a kid, you can play around with different like gender identifications more and not have those same consequences that if when you were older. I knew this girl in my high school, and she had come out as trans and then realized that wasn't how she felt, so she went back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not went back, but told people that actually I'm not trans, I am a woman. And it just took that to find out. People call her by both names now. They don't, like, they call her by both the name she had chosen when she identified as trans and the name when she identified as woman. They use both names, and they only use those two names together. It's scarring to, I think, it's impossible to come out and then go back in, it's not possible. So if you're able to play around when you're younger, test it out, test the waters, see how it is, and feel safe and open to, then you won't have people who are stuck in one thing decided. You want people worried to come out because they're like, well, what if I'm not this?
Absolutely. You know, our society, just like, it needs to be more accepting of experimentation. You know, sometimes we like malign people and we say, you know, oh, that's a phase, and you know, we shouldn't really acknowledge this. But like, even if it is like just a phase, you know, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Phases can teach us things about ourselves that, you know, we wouldn't have otherwise learned if we hadn't gone through that phase. So it's just like we need to just like remove all these barriers and limitations that we've placed on people because they don't actually help us in the end.
Yeah, and people also saying, I don't want my kid to identify as a cat. That's not a thing. I'm like, okay, well, to be fair, I pretended to be a cat all the time when I was a kid. I thought I was like I used to pretend to be all kinds of stuff. I used to go like this and be like, and like roll a pencil down a hill and like, but like go like that and pretend I had magic. That did not mean I had the force. I just pretended to. Like we would play, like we pretend to be cats or we pretend to be vampires and things like that. We would, you know, live in that. And some kids even pretend to be cats for like longer. They're like, oh, I'm a cat, and they'll stick with it. That's completely normal. It doesn't mean you think you're an actual, like, that doesn't mean like you're gonna have a surgery to become a cat. It just means you're like having fun. You're using your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than being an iPad kid.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely worse things you could be.
I'm an iPad kid, so I can say for sure. I was also a leash kid, so there are definitely a lot worse things you can be than a kid who's like, I'm a cat. Okay, is that everything?
Yeah, I think that's everything.
Shauna.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this game show. I am so glad that we got the chance to talk about these very important issues. And, you know, I'm also glad that we got the chance to educate other students or, you know, see what they knew about feminism. And
I think this might have sparked also an interest for them. Like, I think when you learn a little bit of information, that's like much like that's like almost scary. You need to learn more. Like that encourages people to learn more. When I learned about everything that's going on in Palestine, like that made me want. Like I learned one thing, and then it made me want to do so much research for myself. I think that's also powerful. So giving little pieces of information to people can create an interest. Can who knows? They might take gender studies next semester.
Yeah, they might.
And I think that that's what's also important. Doing fun things like this, you know, with a prize, you know, like it's a competition. It's gonna entice people to do things like that. And I think I'm really happy that we took this course this year. I'm happy we became friends with this course.
Yeah.
And I'm happy, like we only touched the surface today. There's so much more. We realize that we don't even know we don't know everything either. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you maybe learned something, if possible. If not, well, we definitely did.
We definitely did.
Yeah, I touched the thing.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me hit the pause button.